We spent the last couple lessons talking about or graphing linear equations, right? We graphed them with tables, and we found the x and the y intercepts and graphed them that way also. There's another approach to graphing, but before we do that, we have to kind of look at some of the attributes of lines. So that's what we're going to start right now. So take just a second. We have these two lines. You have the purple one and the red one. I just want you to compare them and think about how they're different. So if you would, pause the video for just a minute, look at the two lines, and just compare them to each other. How are they different? What makes them different? So what we should have seen, right, is that they have a different slope. And what we mean by slope is a different angle, a different steepness. The red one is actually, from left to right, is actually going down, right? It's falling, it's going down. Whereas the purple, blue, whatever color that is, from left to right is going up, and it's not quite as steep. So one of the main attributes of line is how steep the line is, or what angle it's increasing or decreasing at. And that's what is referred to as the slope. So that's what we're going to review in this lesson, is we're going to go back and look at slope and what is slope and how do we find slope. We want to be able to find slope given a graph, given 2 points, or also just by looking at the equation. So we're going to go through how we can do that using all three of those, with all of those three different types of information given. So let's just start by talking about slope a little bit. So you should have this page in your notes there. So the definition of slope is rise over, a lot of you heard rise over run. Let's actually start with this. In math, the symbol we use for slope a lot is m. So when you see m, we're thinking slope. A lot of you have heard the whole rise over run. What that really means is we're comparing the vertical change. Vertical is measuring up and down. The vertical change compared to the horizontal change. A shorthand way of writing that, if you want to, is you'll see this triangle drawn in math. That means change. So when you see that symbol, they're talking about the change. So you could also say the vertical change, measuring up and down, is really the change in y compared to the change in x. So again, slope's a ratio, and it's just comparing how much it's going up to how much it's going over. So if you look at this graph, this is the same graph we had on the previous page. I just put some points on there. But let's start with the red line. You can pick any 2 points along the line, and you can find the slope. You should get the same slope no matter what. I'll give you one example. Let's say we go from this point to this point. We want to measure the rise or the vertical change. So it goes up 1, 2, 3, 4. So it goes up a positive 4. And it goes over 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So it goes over 8. So our ratio, right, is 4 over 8. Which if you reduce, right, so my slope comes out to be 4 over 8, which you reduce comes out to be a half. Now, if we pick 2 other points on that line, we could go, for example, from this point to this point, right? If I go up, that's up 1, and it's over 2. Well, that comes out, right? That comes out to be 1 over 2. It's the same slope. So it doesn't matter which 2 points you pick. You could also, if you wanted to, I'll do this another color, I could actually pick these 2 points right there, and I could go from right to left. I could go down, that'd be -2. And if you go to the left, it has to be a negative also, which is a -4. Well, a -2 over a -4 still comes out to be a positive 1/2. So it doesn't matter what 2 points we pick. You can pick any 2 points on the line. You should get that same ratio of vertical change, the rise, over the horizontal change, the run. Those are the 2 things we're comparing. Okay, let's go through and just practice. We'll just do a couple of graphs here and practice. Actually, let me go back to that. We also have the other line. Let's find the slope of it. One of the biggest errors we make when we're finding slope is mixing up whether the slope is positive or negative. So one thing I might suggest to avoid that is I would always look at the line to begin with before you ever start and decide, does it have positive slope or does it have negative slope? Well, it's easy to tell. If you look from right to left, if the line's going up, like this line is going up from right to left, that means I know it has to have positive slope. If the line is going down from left to right, from left to right, then it's got negative slope. So if it's going up from left to right, positive, down from left to right, negative. So I know, whoops, sorry about that. I know that this second line, let me just try to, there we go. I know the second line has to have negative slope. So I'm just going to pick 2 points along there and find it. It doesn't matter what two, like we could use these two right here. It's going down 2, and, right, -2, and over to the right one, which is a positive 1. So the slope of that line would be -2 over 1, over 1, or -2, when I simplify that down. There we go. Okay, so just make sure when you're looking at a line, decide if it's positive or negative. Another thing to be really careful with is to make sure you do the vertical change on top, the change in Y, and the horizontal change, the left and right on the bottom. Those are usually the 2 biggest errors. So let's do a couple problems. We'll do these 2 together. These are also in your notes there. So do these with me, and then you guys can try a couple on your own. Okay, so I'm going to start with this first line. So I'm looking at it from left to right. That line is increasing. Hey, so I automatically know it's positive slope. So I'm going to make sure I have positive slope for that. I got 3 points on there. I'm just going to pick 2 of them. I'm going to go from there to there. So just measure your vertical change. It's going up 2. Horizontal change. It's going over 5. So the slope of that line would be positive 2 over positive 5, or positive 2/5. Okay, let's do the other one. So if I pick 2 points off of there, I'm going to go that point to that point. This line, by the way, from left to right is going down. I know it's got to have negative slope. It's going down 1, 2, 3, 4, -4, and to the right one, that's a positive 1. So it would be a -4 over 1, which you can reduce, right? It just comes out to be -4. Okay, I want you guys to give it a try. This is the next one in your notes. Go ahead and find the slope of this line. So pause the video, find the slope, and then come back and we'll check it together. All right, so we're deciding first if it has positive or negative slope. This one is going up from left to right, so we know it has positive slope. Okay, pick 2 points, any 2 points you want. Usually the closer they are together, the easier it is to do, but you can do any 2 points. That one's going up 1, 2, 3, and over 1. So positive 3 over positive 1, which reduces down just to be 3. So it has a slope of 3. So pretty easy. You guys have done this in the past, so hopefully that's a refresher on if you're given a graph, rise over run, or the vertical change, up and down, over the horizontal change left and right. And the 2 things to be careful with, making sure that you're correct if the slope is positive or negative, and you can decide that before you ever find it. And the second thing is making sure that the vertical change is on top. So you go up first and over second. Okay, this one's a little bit different because I have these 2 lines. I have this first one up here, which is a horizontal line. Let's see if we can find the slope. If I pick 2 points, I've got 1 there. Let's put another point right there. So think about the rise. How far is it going up between those 2 points? Well, from there to there, it's not going up. So the vertical change is 0. Now it's going over 1, 2, 3, 4. So I get 0 over 4. Well, 0 over 4 is equal to 0. Hey, it turns out horizontal lines, add this to your notes, horizontal lines always have a slope of 0. And the reason why, right, is because there's no vertical change. It's not going up and down. And so if there's no vertical change, that means the top of the fraction will always be 0 over something. Okay, look at this red line right here. This one's a vertical line going that way. Let's pick 2 points on there. So it doesn't matter where the points are. Let me put a couple points there. Okay, think of your vertical change. From here, it's going up 1, 2, 3. It's going up 3. So my slope is equal to 3 over. And how far is it going over? Well, it doesn't go over at all. There's no horizontal change. So the horizontal change is 0. Okay, this is important. We talked about this this is one of the first things we ever talked about in this class. And that is you cannot divide by 0. It's impossible. So what we say is, since it's not possible, we say the slope is undefined. And that will always be true of vertical lines because you're not moving left or right. So go ahead and put that down. If it's a vertical line, the slope will always be undefined. Okay, what we're going to talk about next, so we know how to find the slope given a graph. Now we're going to find the slope given points. So if you look at this next example in your notes there, it says find the slope of the line that passes through the 2 points. I got the points 2, 5, and negative 1, 7. So we're going to start out, we're going to think about our slope formula. It's the change in y, the vertical change, over the change in x, the horizontal change. Well, to measure how much y changes by, the way we do that is I take the 2 y coordinates and I subtract them. So I take the one y coordinate minus the other y coordinate. To find the change in x, I do the same thing, but I do it with the x coordinate. So write this formula down, please. Got the change in y, which is just take y2 minus y1 and subtract the 2 y coordinates, over the change in x, x2 minus x1, subtract the 2 x coordinates. Now it turns out it doesn't matter which one of these points we call x1, y1, and which one we call x1, x2, y2. That's completely up to you. The main thing is this, is look at the y's. So my 2 y's are 7 and 5. So here's what I have to be careful with. If I go 7 minus 5, so I took this one minus this one, I have to go the same direction. I have to go negative 1 minus 2. And then just be careful with your signs. 7 minus 5 is 2. Negative 1 minus 2 is a negative 3. And when you have that 2 over negative 3, a positive divided by a negative is just a negative. So we put that negative out in front. So that's my slope right there, which is a negative 2/3. Now I want you to notice something. If I had switched those around, instead of going 7 minus 5, if I'd gone 5 minus 7, let's try that. Let's go 5 minus 7 and also. You could do that, but then I have to go, if I go 5 minus 7, I have to go 2 minus negative 1. You have to go in the same order, right? If I go from 5 minus 7, I have to go 2 minus negative 1. Watch what happens. I end up with on top a negative 2. That changes to a plus. So on the bottom, I ended up with 3. A negative 2 over 3 is still a negative 2/3. So I get the same answer. So it doesn't matter what order you go in as long as you go in the same order both times. So if I'm going to go 5 minus 7, I have to go 2 minus negative 1. Or if I'm going to go the opposite way, right? 7 minus 5, I have to go negative 1 minus 2. So that's really the biggest pitfall with this. That and being really careful with signs. It's easy to make little mistakes there with signs. Let's do one more together, then I'll have you try one. So I have this point, I have 0, 5, and I have negative 4, 2. Okay, so we start out. Slope formula, right? M is equal to, and I go y minus y. So these are the 2 y coordinates. I can either go 2 minus 5 or 5 minus 2. I'm going to go 5 minus 2 just because it seems easier. But if I go 5 minus 2, I've got to go 0 minus negative 4. Ends up looking like that. 5 minus 2 is 3. Minus a negative changes to a plus. That ends up being 4. So there's my slope right there, which is 3/4. I want you guys to try this one. So see if you can find the slope of this one. So pause the video for a second, give it a try, and then we'll come back and we'll look at it together. So if you look at this, we're going to go, again, y minus y, so it's going to be 2 minus 2 over, then let's say I go 2 minus 2, I'm going to go negative 3 minus negative 6. So I end up with 0 over, that changes to a plus, negative 3 plus 6 is 3. Hey, this has a slope of 0, so remember what we just talked about. If it has a slope of 0, that means it's actually a horizontal line. So, right, if we graph that, you don't need to graph it, but just think about what the graph would look like. I've got a point at negative 3, 2, and negative 6, 2. It just forms, just really just a horizontal line going that direction. Let's do this last point here, and then we'll look at equations. Okay, so again, if I go y minus y, again, you can choose. I can either go negative 1 minus 2. Let's do that. Negative 1 minus 2. Oops, yeah, that was okay. sorry, negative 1 minus 2, over, that got to go the same way. So I'm going to go negative 4 minus negative 4. Be really, really careful with signs. On top, I get a negative 3, but just be careful. Minus a negative changes to a plus. So negative 4 plus 4 ends up being 0. Hey, you cannot divide by 0. So negative 3 divided by 0 doesn't work, which means it's undefined. Hey, what this means, if you remember that example we did with the graph, is that this line is a vertical line, if you were to look at it. Okay, the last thing I want you to be able to do is to look at an equation and find the slope. So let's do a table really quick. By the way, you're going to have a couple review problems on your assignment where you'll be asked to graph with a table or with finding the x and y intercepts. This is a good review of that anyway. So let's plug some points in. So let's say I put 2 in for x. So I'd go y equals a half times 2 plus 1. So a half times 2 is 1. 1 plus 1 is, so this ends up, I think you can plug that in a calculator, work it out, and it ends up being 2. Let's do another point. So let's plug in 0. 0 is easy to plug in. Y equals a half times 0 plus 1. Well, that's 0 plus 1 is 1. All right, so let's come up here. I have a point at 2, 2, and have a point at 0, 1. Those are my 2 points. Okay, go ahead and we're going to draw the straight edge. So grab a straight edge and draw that goes through those points. And then let's find the slope. So if I look at that, it's going up 1 and over 2, right? It's got to be a positive slope. So the slope is a half. Hey, well, I want to point something out here. The slope can have to be a half. Look at what was in front of the x right there. We had a positive half. It turns out, write this down in your notes. We're going to talk a lot more about this on the next lesson, but we're just going to kind of introduce it a little bit for now. If your linear equation is in that form, the y equals mx plus b, that number in front of the x will actually always tell you what the slope is. So as long as the equation's written that way, you can just look at what's in front of the x, you know the slope. Okay, really simple way of finding it. So if you look at this equation, y equals negative 3x plus 2, that number right there, that's the slope. I don't have to make a table. I don't have to go through all the steps. As long as it's in that y equals mx plus b form, that number in front of the x will always be your slope. Now, if the number's not in front of the x, that's a little bit trickier to find. Like if the equation's not in that form, in that y equals mx plus b form, it's a little harder to find. But we're going to go through that in the next lesson and talk more about this. On today's assignment, that's all you have to be able to do is if it's in that form, identify what the slope is as you look at it. Okay, make sure you work hard and help each other. If you have questions, keep track of them. Let the substitute know and he can send them to me, and I'll try to answer all that I can. But make sure you're helping each other and working together and getting stuff done. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.